Thanks for staying with us. Experts are calling on government and other energy sector role players to develop longer-term solutions to the country's power crisis with sustainability as the ultimate goal. This amid moves by the president to bring on board independent power producers and a court case involving the controversial power-generating ships. Joining us now to talk more about the process towards sustainable solutions is Professor Sampson Maphweil of the Stellenbosch University's Center for Renewable and Sustainable Energy. Prof, always great to speak to you. Thank you so much for being on Newsfeed PM. So the issue of car power ships is an ongoing discussion. It came up again when the energy minister was speaking with members of parliament. What is your take on where things are currently?
Thank you so much for having me. We've always maintained, as energy experts, that the issue of car power ships is not going to work in South Africa. I'm on record, saying this so many times, even long before the procurement process was started. There are several challenges there, and one of the biggest challenges that we had to move away from the acceptable method or way of procuring this energy, which is through the IRP. Although legally it is acceptable, it is allowed, but when you look at the sector itself, the sector had already accepted the way the IRP was being implemented, the REAP program to be specific, and we find ourselves in this kind of quagmire because we delayed the implementation of the IRP, and now we're looking for quick solutions. And that is not going to work because in looking for quick solutions, we then look for shortcuts. There are many problems with the car power ships. The first issue is the cost of those power ships. The second issue, which is very big, is the issue of technology localization. We're never going to have technology localization when it comes to the car power ships. I've followed the department's comments on that. Saying we will have localization on things like cables and things like that. We're not even going to get anywhere near 10% in localization of the car power ships. The environmental impacts, that was never considered from the beginning. Those car power ships were not supposed to be preferred, before the environmental considerations. And that we're sitting now with a situation where we have the preferred car power ships, but they can't dock and provide us with electricity because of environmental challenges. And the environmental scientists and many people who are champions around the environmental issues are not going to allow that to happen. And the minister has correctly so, denied them environmental authorization. So the same way that's happening with the coal IPPs that have been allocated long time ago, but nobody's prepared to finance coal at this point in time because the world is moving towards renewable energy as things stand.
And it's interesting that you lay all of those complications out. You're right in saying the Environment Department has denied car power ships clearance, if you can phrase it that way, to go ahead with this sort of project, so they don't have the certification. You've got the allegations of corruption, but when you listen to the presentation by Minister Gwede Mantashe, he in fact implied that the company is being picked on because there are about, 10 other companies that would be involved. And I'm wondering how different their section of the deal would be to what everyone else is doing. Is the minister right to say that there's unfair focus on them specifically?
The minister is not getting this right. Unfortunately, I have to disagree with him. When you look at that procurement in its totality, that procurement is very much wrong. When we go for emergency power, we were supposed to be looking first at the available means of procurement, which is, in my case, in my view, the REAP program, which has been accepted by the sector itself. So the mere fact that other companies are going to be involved, those other companies that are going to be involved, they're not necessarily going to be involved through the power ships. The ones that will be involved in partnership with the power ships won't even bring the local content to more than 10%. And we're looking more on when we look at the economic impact of in the energy sector, we're looking at how much local content are we going to have in this kind of a procurement. I think that it's a decision that needs to be reversed. I don't think we're going to have these car power ships docking on our shores and providing energy to us. The other aspect that I have not touched on is the issue of the grid capacity, where these car power ships are going to be docking. There is no report, from what I know, that tells us that there is adequate grid capacity in the shores where they are going to be docking. So that's another very important issue that will come back to haunt us. We may have those ships docking, and then we later discover that there is not enough grid capacity where they are docking.
So, Prof, let me ask you this then. The alternatives, would they be able to give us more power on the grid, and would they be able to do that faster than what is now being pursued by government?
Yes, the alternatives, even in the emergency procurement, we do have some alternatives. And the alternatives for me, as things stand, we're curtailing some of the renewable energy capacity that we have through from the IPPs on the wind energy side of things. We could be having in excess of 300 or 400 megawatts that we're curtailing because they are not allowed to feed that electricity onto the grid because of the power purchase agreements that they have with government. We have a number of other projects that have already been built, that are waiting by the sidelines to feed power onto the grid. So if we look at emergency and we start looking internally and request for information, we may find that we've got a lot more power that is sitting and waiting to come into the grid immediately. If we look at a new build kind of a program, if you want to build new solar power stations and new wind energy power stations, you're looking at about 2 to 2.5 years of building these systems. And the challenge that we have at the moment is that the department is not necessarily in sync with Eskom. Eskom has got good plans, they've got great plans, they're looking at the real situation, the reality. And they're advising to say, we can build these renewable energy power plants within 2 years, all our energy problems will be solved.
Eskom has said so far that it plans to spend just over 100 billion rand on renewable energy, I think, in the next 15 years or so. Can that be done faster and cheaper?
That can be done much faster, and it can also be cheaper. I'm not for Eskom building by themselves because that has got its own dynamics. If you look at the direction that the world is taking, and I understand where Eskom is coming from, I've looked at their just energy transition strategy. They've got a brilliant strategy. As things stand, the economy is not growing. South Africa is contracting because of COVID and other things. When we look at Europe, for instance, European countries are starting to impose carbon tax on the goods that are coming from South Africa that are manufactured using fossil fuel technology, electricity. So that's why Eskom recently announced that they are looking at a tariff where they can sell renewable energy to particular companies into industry so that they can kind of de-risk that part and be able to grow the economy through exports to European countries. So,
Professor Sampson Maphweil, always good to speak to you, sir. Thank you for your time.